finally a video where you don't have to do what I say to do in the video. And that's because we are starting schematic design from our lovely gas station model. And we're going to put either a coffee shop or a soup dispensary or honestly whatever sort of thing you think is appropriate for this building. The program is pretty straightforward. I'm assuming this is some kind of drive-through service, but again, you can have fun with it, and it should have some seating. And you do have to keep the existing building, but you can add on to it. You can enclose parts of it, or you can have a full new addition. And of course, if you want to stick with the drive-through option, you should probably have a little ordering kiosk. So when starting schematic design, or really any new phase, you'll want to first save as your project. So File, Save As, Project, and save it under a new name. Something like schematic design would be a good idea so that you don't overwrite all the existing conditions, but if you absolutely need to, you can go back to them. Another good thing you can do to make your life a little more, move along a little more efficiently is, first of all, turn off shadows. And you also might want to put yourself in either shaded or textured views instead of the full-on rendered view, the realistic view. And the reason that just makes your computer run a little more quickly. And also, one thing to do when you're coming up with new design options is you're going to want to remove some existing stuff. Like I don't need the chairlift or the barrels or anything like that. The kind of official way to do that is to use phases. You go to phases, and if everything was created in the existing phase, which I don't think we did, but if it was, you can demolish it in the new construction. And the way that would work is I'll select an object, and I could use the demolish tool. You can also check the objects here, and you see how it has the phase created. I could make the phase created existing and the phase that was demolished new construction. And when you hit apply, it should disappear from your view. Now, in our case, we didn't really create everything under the existing phase. If you remember all of our walls and things, we just kind of created everything under the new construction phase. And this is typical of a school project where, it's not a real project, so we don't need to worry about it so much. So by all means, you can just select an object and tap the delete key, and that works just fine. And of course, we have the backup in our other model in case you want to get those rusty oil barrels back for that kind of weathered look. Now, often starting a new design, you want to come up with a couple of different options. And of course, good old pen and paper or pencil and paper are awesome for that sort of thing. Revit does have a feature which allows you to kind of more realistically compare different design options, and it's cleverly labeled Design Options. It's on the Manage tab. And I'll just click on that little puppy. And what you'll see is that by default, there are no design options in your project. And the way it works is you first start by creating a new option set. So, and that option set, it's called option set 1, and I believe you can rename that probably. Here we go, rename it, and I'll call it, soup to nuts or whatever you want to call it. And by default, it creates within that option set, there can be multiple options. And this is great if you wanted to say, have one option set that is, an outdoor kiosk option. And then maybe you'll have several options under that for different styles of outdoor kiosks. And then maybe you have another one that's sort of the interior layout, and you'll have several options for the interior layout, and those two may be independent. Now, we have a small project, so we only need one option group, option set, and we'll have one primary option. You can also make a new option under that. So option 1, if I rename that might be something like maybe like a drive-through with a kiosk, and the other one I'll rename that to be just a seated service only. How about that? So we get two different options. And I can make a new one and again, add as many options as I want and rename this guy, roof seating or something crazy like that. So you can have multiple options in your project. The big thing is you begin with the primary option. Okay, so I'll click OK. And down here in the bottom of my model, what you'll see here is right now it just says main model. So I'm editing the main model, you know, I'm deleting things and all that kind of stuff. As soon as I want to change to be editing one of the options, and you see how the model, the option group is, option set is kind of grayed out, and then the sub options within that set are available. If I choose drive through with kiosk primary, everything gets kind of gray, well, except for the ground. So come on, Revit, be consistent. Anyway, and now anything that I add to the model will be set onto that design option. And now you can just add any objects that you feel like. You can add components to your heart's delight, all of them here. I'll put a bunch of toilets. Maybe this will be one of those restaurants where people sit at toilets and drink out of, you know, strange, horrible toilet soup bowls and things like that. There actually is a restaurant that I went to like that in Taiwan. It's a little disturbing, but it's actually pretty cool too. And the food was surprisingly good. And any of the things that you do to these objects, you can, you know, move, copy, rotate, all those kinds of things. They are all part of this design option. And you can also add in imported objects, but like we did previously, imported objects, I would put those inside Revit families. So, and obviously for us, the big imported object is going to be SketchUp objects. Finally, you are going to want to include some kinds of, sometimes you just don't know what an object is going to look like. For instance, I believe I want a kiosk over here where people would say what they want to order, and then they'll drive up maybe, and they'll drive through here and they'll pick it up over here. Sounds like a fun idea, but I'm not ready to design what that kiosk looks like yet. I could absolutely come in here and do a model in place, and I'm not sure what a kiosk would be, maybe furniture, something like that. I suppose food service, huh? But anyway, and then you can create an extrusion or what, you know, whatever it is that you're you know, kind of rows your boat, if you want some fun kiosk-y kind of thing. And then, you know, select that object and, I don't know, you know, make it a shape like that. And that's great for a kind of just a placeholder object. Like, I know people want to drive up here, but I'm not exactly sure. Don't forget that you can also do a mass in place. And these are awesome. They are not displayed normally. So remember that any view you want to see those masses, you have to go to the visibility and graphic overrides menu in that view so that you can see these, but they render just fine. And these are fun because, again, you can create the same kind of shape we just created, but it has, you know, kind of a few more options to it. You can drag pieces, but then you can actually you can rotate them, create all sorts of funky twisted forms. You can even grab just individual points or lines and really warp this puppy to make a fun shape. So sometimes it will give you an error message, so let's not do that. But anyway, it's just another fun option here in Revit because, you know, we want to be able to do any kind of design or shape. And this is to be determined later, right? I haven't quite decided what I want to do with that. Now, what if you decide as you're going along here, say, you know, actually, I don't like this fence. And honestly, I really don't like this fence. I want to get rid of it. Well, what you can do, you can quickly switch back to the main model. And now you can select objects in the main model. So maybe I'll delete this and the curbs or something like that. And I can just delete them. And when I go back to that drive-through with the kiosk, I can go back and continue adding objects. I can move these objects based on, you know, kind of whatever rows my boat. So what if I want a second design option, which I do, and let's say in this case maybe I want to have all these elements that I've added, but I want to just move them around a little bit, so it's all kind of the same thing. I can actually select them, Control C to copy, which I know you couldn't see, but that's what I did, and then I can go here and choose maybe the seated service here. And when I switch to that design option, you see how the other design option disappears. And then I can come and literally just Control V to paste in these objects, and they will, and you have to click the little checkbox to make them permanent. I can delete other options. I can select these guys and I don't know, nudge them around, that sort of thing. Maybe I'll have rows of toilets facing each other because I need a little bit more space here. I'll draw a nice kind of mirrored group. So now we have a lot of seating underneath this building. And I could add in plenty of other things, including I could put curtain walls around this building to enclose it, or I could build a whole nother little building off to the side if I wanted to. And of course, landscaping, that sort of stuff. I could add all that in, and that will show up in this design option. And you might say, well, wait, what if I want to compare them? Well, I can just jump from one to the other by switching these elements here, these view options. And these design options are also part of the visibility and graphic overrides of any view. So let's go, let's say I created a 3D view. Let's see, I have an exterior perspective here of my project. You can see that it has the design option visible here. Now, if I just choose main model, it will go back to the primary option. Okay, and see how the materials now look correct, but it's only showing this main option here, the primary option. You do have to go to the dreaded visibility and graphic overrides menu. VG is the shortcut. And when you have design options, it shows up here on the design option set. Now, normally it automatically chooses whatever the primary one is, but you can force it to show the other option. This is great. Let's say I have one option, one view of the exterior where maybe I want to, here, let's rename this as, seating option. I could duplicate this view. And now in this view, I can go to the visibility and graphic overrides option and make sure that it is set to the one that I want, the drive-through kiosk. Just hit apply and OK. And you can see that's how I can have two views, exactly the same perspective view, but one has one option, one has the other option. Really great when you're doing say a presentation, you want to propose multiple options. You can have exactly the same views and compare them, makes it understandable to your client. And I just want to show you one other feature of this, which is, let's say I wanted to have this roof seating option. You can have more complex elements as part of your design options. I've made this the roof seating option, and here let's just go and we'll create some stairs up to the roof. Go choose the stair option, and I don't know, let's draw like a full step spiral stair, draw it like so. Let's make it so that it lands more or less at the roof, and click the checkbox to finish it. So now I have a spiral stair. I actually probably should have checked to make sure that it really does go up to the roof. And then this object will be part of the design option. In fact, if I choose architecture and I draw a railing, and I'll just draw it around this roof here, click the checkbox. Often what I forget to do, let's take a look at this. I'll bet you it's on the ground. It is on the ground. If you ever do that, don't redraw it. I should have set the reference plane, the work plane. I should have picked a plane and clicked on the roof, but I didn't. That's okay. You can select these objects, a common mistake, and pick a new host, and then move your mouse over the edge of the roof, and it should jump right up. So there's my other design option. And these design options are visible in every view, pretty much, of your project. And if you wanted to create, say, two floor plans that have the same, or that have different design options, you do run into a little bit of trickiness here. So if I say, click on this to rename it, and I want to call this seating, like I did before, it will say, do you want to rename the corresponding level and views? We have things like a reflected ceiling plan. We may want to rename that if we're going that far. Probably because our project is pretty simple. No, we don't want to. We just want to keep our first floor level called the ground floor, but we want to rename this view ground floor seating. By the way, and you can also do that in the properties menu. You can actually change the name in the properties menu too. But okay, anyway, so let's say I duplicate this guy. And I'll duplicate it here. And the detailing would add in, if I were to duplicate the detailing, would add in any of the filled regions or detail lines that I might have created. And when I rename this copy of the floor plan, the levels are not associated with it, so it doesn't give me that warning message. But anyway, just like we did before, in your visibility and graphic overrides, you can tell this view, instead of having it just kind of automatically change with whatever the primary view is, you can tell it, oh, I want this to be the, oh wait, what do we got there? Seated surface. We want it to be the drive-through. Apply and OK. So I guess if this is the drive-through, then the other one, let's see, we're back on the main model. We better make sure that our other floor plan has the correct correct design option here. Let's see, what have I got? I've got the seated option here. So again, it's set to automatic. Make sure it's choosing the one that you were hoping for. And I'll just tile all these windows so you can kind of see what that looks like. They actually don't kind of match each other when you tile the windows. But if you were to lay out sheets, a sheet with these images on it, absolutely you could arrange it any which way you want. Or you could do what we want to do, which is export a PDF to submit for homework. And what does that look like? Well, the easiest way, as we have seen before, you go to your Export PDF button and you export selected views and sheets. Just filter that. You have many filters available here. So if we just choose 3D views, I only had 2 checked. So by all means, choose these. I also have 2D views, those 2 floor plans. Again, just make sure that you choose the floor plans that are the ones that you're intending. I believe mine are conveniently right here next to the other 2. And there you go. Once you've selected them, just make sure that you are combining them into a single file. You know where on earth they're going, because I always forget to check that. You can also, in this case, because these are probably not going to be put on scale, scaled sheets, we're just going to look at them electronically. You can, by all means, choose a smaller size, say Arch B, and then just scale them to fit onto those pages. And don't forget, by the way, we don't have any interior elevations, but you typically do hide the crop boundaries. Also, with shaded views like this or realistic views like this, you'll want to use raster processing. Revit will actually do that for you if you forget. And here's that beautiful PDF that we created here. You can see it has each of the different views in it. So, as you work through your design options, sometimes one comes to the front or becomes the more preferred option. By all means, you can change one to the primary option. This will change any views that automatically adjust. So adjust what option they're showing. So be aware of that. Anyway, and then when you are ready to move on and accept one of these as your option for the future, you can choose this Accept Primary button. Now, before I do that, I'm going to give the big warning, which is save your file under a new name, maybe call it file with project with no options or something like that. Because as soon as I accept the primary, watch what happens. It gives me this error message, or not error message, but warning saying, hey, pay attention. If you accept that primary, all other options, however many there are, will all go away. Now, I have saved this under a different name, this project, so I now have a copy of it with the options in case I need to go back. Choose Accept Primary, and what it will also do is any views that had the other design options, and I had quite a few, those will get deleted. And that's okay. So you can, just kind of select them. Unchecked views will remain. Checked views will go away. Now, in my case, I think I actually don't have any floor plans left, so maybe I better retain one of these. Well, or not. I'll just click OK. And what you'll see, all the design options go away. Also, so did my floor plan. Oh no! So I can just go to the View menu and choose Floor Plan and create a new floor plan. And by the way, if you want to make duplicates of your floor plan, you can do that by just unchecking this box. And now it somehow thinks I already have a ground floor plan, which I don't. But anyway, I'll click OK. And now I have my lovely ground floor plan. And you'll see when I do that, besides it taking the graphic display options that I had before, it now shows that option for the roof. It shows it as basically a permanent part of the model. All right, so now we want to render our beautiful project, and Lumion is our chosen method, but there are some best practices you can use when you are starting the rendering process. And one of the biggest ones is we used some proxy objects in this project, although not in this option. And you may want to consider using Lumion objects for any number of different things. Furnishings and landscaping in particular are things that Lumion has that are really nice. So not even modeling them in Revit is an option, right? Or deleting the ones that you have and putting in more final versions. This is particularly true for things like plantings, which absolutely are better in Lumion, but also landscape forms and things like that. Now, other things to consider. I like to close all of my windows except for one when I launch Lumion. And the reason is because when you launch it, it likes to launch from a 3D view, but it can get confused if you have like 100 windows open. As before, make sure the windows aren't in realistic view. You want to try to reduce the amount of load on your computer as much as possible. Also, on the Lumion tab, by all means, make sure that you check see that it's syncing. You can also lower this value here, how smooth the surfaces are that are exported to Lumion. And typically we leave that on high. This isn't a particularly big model, but if your model is running slow, you can change that setting. Also, you'll see here I don't have any design options. I have already eliminated them in the previous step, and that's a good idea. If you start switching design options with Lumion running, what you'll find is Lumion basically gets a little confused, and it will basically add in all the new design options that you create, and that can make for kind of a funky view. Relaunching Lumion will, of course, fix that. You can try just turning on and off the live sync button. Sometimes that fixes it, but often it doesn't. And sometimes if you have a problem, Lumion just doesn't launch at all. Try restarting Revit. This is particularly true if you've been using Lumion and then in one session and closed it. It sometimes thinks it's still open. I don't know why. Come on, Lumion, get with the program. Other things we have probably talked about, and I'm not going to go over the entire Lumion video. There's another video for that one. But basically, Lumion respects Revit materials generally. So if you apply any kind of material in Revit, Lumion will recognize it. And there are some funny sorts of situations that you'll run into where the materials don't apply correctly. And this is particularly true for mapped material. So let's say you used an image in Revit to, I don't know, create a material. Sometimes those maps don't show up correctly in Lumion. You can just reapply the map in Lumion. The other instance actually where that happens has nothing to do with Revit, but if you have a photo, say a photo match from SketchUp, maybe you've loaded that into Lumion, sometimes those photo matches go haywire when you get into Lumion. Again, reapplying the material is the way to go, or applying a new material inside Lumion. Trying to fix it in Revit can actually be kind of a pain. And Lumion is where you want to do all of your final material settings anyway. Other instances where you can have problems is when you create, say, a standalone family. If you remember, we created a standalone family. Oh, I think it was this one. And if you edit materials inside that family, so you're editing the family and you go here and you create some new material, blah 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 blah, and it's inside this family, re-importing that family into your model will sometimes cause problems with the materials. So best is to create a parameter in the family and then in Revit in the main project apply that final material. And this is particularly true for objects we get off of the internet, which who knows who made those objects. But when you change the material inside that family, and then try and re-import it, sometimes that re-importation doesn't work. You'll usually see it in Revit, but not always. Again, I'm working in shaded mode, so sometimes the shaded color is just Jim Dandy. Same with things like glass from curtain walls. That material is a material part of the system in Revit. So those curtain walls always use the glass material. So if you go to the materials library, if that glass material isn't set up properly, it might look a little gray. There are a couple of annoying things about the way Lumion handles lighting. First of all, the sun, we went through all that effort to geolocate this model, and darn you, Lumion, you did not respect it. This is the way my shadows look here in Revit. And now let's look at them in Lumion, and you can see that they're coming from a different direction. Gosh darn it. There is a way in using an effect to do a solar study. There also is a way if you go to the Landscape tab and OpenStreetMap. I don't believe this will change the sun, but you can turn on the OpenStreetMap and then you can geolocate your model. The nice thing about that is you can actually give a very specific location. And just click on the GPS coordinate and you can download neighborhood maps and all that kind of other good stuff. And when you're geolocating, you can actually get quite specific. You can even orient the map and anything that's or orient the model to the map. Anything that is in the available database will show up here as a 3D model. And you just download it, and you'll see that the sun actually does change to be the sun available in Coalinga. Here, let's get rid of some of these buildings. So kind of a cool feature, but we actually don't need all of this stuff. So never mind. But when you're rendering, that is actually kind of nice when you can do that. You just have to get a more precise address than I have right now. Another thing about lighting that can be annoying is you need to have some sort of light fixture in Revit to receive lighting in Lumion. And so I can place any kind of fixture in here, SketchUp object or whatever, but you need the geometry. And it's particularly important if you have downlights because that will cut into ceilings. And then you can place the lighting inside Lumion. Just remember, the objects you place in Lumion don't generally produce any light. So let's say I place, this wall lamp fixture here. It does respect the geometry that you have in your project. However, it will not render. And one good check for that is you can go and change the weather so that it's nighttime. And if there's nighttime, it gets awfully dark because there's no light coming out of that darn light fixture. So obviously let's make it the daytime again. And that's the difference between placing a Lumion lighting object and actually placing a Lumion light. These lights are much more effective at making light. All the objects don't really make any light. So if you want light to come out of this object, you have to choose one. In this case, probably an omnidirectional light makes the most sense. And I'll choose one of these. And then you have to kind of figure out how to get it in there and move it around. And that always takes a little bit of effort to figure out exactly. A lot of kind of nudging left and right and up and down to get it inside the fixture. which, as you can see here, now it lights up. Now, other problems that you run into, not so much with Lumion objects because we can't change their materials, but if this was a SketchUp object and you wanted it, or a Revit object, make sure you change any materials, especially if you want them to be glass. Change them in Revit, and then you'll have access to those materials here. In Lumion, you can make them as translucent or transparent as you want. Finally, when you're doing lighting in Lumion, our project is probably a little small for this, but you can absolutely use layers. Putting those light sources on layers is super handy. And the reason is, I have all these light sources in this model. It's nice to be able to turn them off and on as kind of a bank. And here I'll start turning them off. That was some of the landscape. I don't know what that was. This turns off some of the fill lighting in the building. You can create a lot of different effects by turning on and off these lighting groups. And again, you just can select a bunch of objects and put them into different groups, or layers in Lumion. So you select a light, and there's a layer option here, and it even tells you, oh, those are other hidden layers, and you can control other things, whether or not it goes on automatically at night. But having these layers is awfully nice because you can, oops, I don't want to do that, because you can control the lighting in such a kind of subtle way. And lighting makes a huge difference in our projects. The one area where Lumion does not play nicely or not play consistently with Lumion material or Revit materials is poche. And as we saw before, you can change the color of poche and using your graphic display options. We fiddled around with that. Visibility, graphic overrides, we can override it or use phases. But Lumion takes its its settings from the 3D view that you launched it from. It doesn't care what the floor plan is. And like I said before, I launched this, I just have this in shaded mode. So the thing that makes the difference here, like I said, it ignores your graphic display option, but it does pay attention to the rendering level, the detail level. So set this to coarse scale. And what that does, it forces Revit to use a material called poche. And it's very interesting. If you look at the poche material, it's actually using the graphics of the poche material here. The color has a solid fill pattern applied to it, and the color is blue. And this is actually what you'll see when you go to Revit. I don't know why in this case it chooses to use the solid fill color, but I'm going to actually just change it to use the render appearance and change the render appearance to be black. That way it covers all bases just in case, and I'm consistent with all other materials. When I do that and hit apply and OK, you should see anything cut by the section box should turn black. Floor plans within Revit, however, will remain the same. They are unaffected by that. So it's only really the section box that has this effect. And launching Lumion from this view will retain that characteristic. So now when Lumion starts, you'll see that section box. And so you can see the section box has cropped away the model, and anything that's cut through gets that black color defined by the material in poche in Revit. It's kind of a weird way that it works, Lumion mostly respects materials, except in this one instance. And this is the way you can get a plan in Lumion that looks pretty good. Again, it's probably not the most perfect thing. The biggest thing, if you remember, in Lumion, you save a camera and you use an orthographic effect. Turn it on so that you're now in orthographic view, and put it in top view and get the heading the way you like, and zoom in as you see fit. I'll just zoom in on this so you can see the effects of everything. And that's how your plan can get this nice black poche. And changing your display options in Revit while you've got Lumion up and running, just like before with changing other options and adding design options, it'll make Lumion go bananas. So probably better to just change it only when you get to launch Lumion after you've changed those display options. Now, the other thing is the clipping options. If you remember, you can clip away the model. See how the poche goes away when I clip farther into the wall. And this is just kind of an annoying, glitchy thing that Lumion seems to render the inside material of the wall when it uses its own clipping planes. So you'll want to not use those clipping planes. You'll want to just use the section box. This is, of course, inconvenient because your perspective views will also have section boxes available unless you launch Lumion from those views. So you might have to do separate sets. Export your plans, then change the section box in Revit, export your sections, and then remove the section box in Revit and do all your perspectives in Lumion. And while you're here in the effects menu, there's other ones that you can add that'll make your drawing look a little nicer. Obviously, we're trying to get the best plan we can. And we can use effects to get ourselves a slightly nicer looking plan here. I'm going to let's try outlines. It's here on the conceptual tab. And there's a bunch of different tabs, but let's try that one. That's usually kind of your best bet here. And you can control how dense those lines are by dragging the slider. And the overdraw is kind of how much the corners extend from each other. Here, I'll leave it on pretty high. Finally, the transparency, you'll see more of the materials beyond or less, depending on how transparent you make it. And this may be the kind of thing where you decide to export this in multiple flavors and use Photoshop to kind of tweak them. Finally, color variation, you can basically desaturate or kind of slowly desaturate the image by dragging this slider. I'm going to hit F11 so you can see this in a larger scale. And you can see that, that actually is not that bad a plan for our purposes. And there are a couple of other options. There are effects that you could try. For instance, there's one called Pastel Sketch, which can make it look a little more sketchy. Sometimes these might do well in Photoshop, kind of layered in Photoshop. Sharpen and Print Poster Enhancer are good ones. And if I apply that with the outlines menu, you can see that that's actually a pretty good plan. The only bummer is that the outlines effect does kind of ruin the really nice black poche. But I think it looks pretty good, and absolutely, like every drawing, you're going to want to open it in Photoshop anyway before putting together your final presentation. Finally, what I'm not going to talk about is the kind of nitty-gritty of setting up views in Lumion and rendering them in great detail. Other things like modeling complex model elements. These have all been covered before in other videos, so you can go and kind of use my videos, or frankly anybody's videos. There's a lot of really smart people out there who are much better at Revit and Lumion than I am. And use those resources, the things that you've already learned through my own videos, to complete this project.